I'm about to tell you something that sounds completely backwards, especially at a time when everyone and their mother-in-law is predicting economic collapse. The businesses that survive downturns aren't the ones that just cut costs and panic. They're also not the ones that just pivot every month. The ones that are most likely to survive this coming wave are the ones that are doing something super interesting. Instead of tuning out, they're tuning into that little voice that says business as usual is over, and what is going to be required to thrive in this new economy isn't something that you can learn from a course or copy from a competitor. In fact, it's something that's both brand new and older than God. And I discovered all this the hard way when I had to shut down my own $2.4 million company. Today, I want to show you why the things that you might be throwing away as failures might actually be your most valuable assets. Let's rewind to 2012 when I started a company called Smiggly Slings, a baby carrier company that I was obsessed with. I loved everything about baby wearing, the closeness, the cultural roots, the biological logic of it all. So I made slings and I sold them to friends and family. And the company never really took off. Why? Because there was so much to do and so much I didn't know. I didn't know about sourcing. I didn't know about safety certification, manufacturing. On every metric that matters to capitalism, that experience was a complete failure. But here's what I understand now that I didn't see then. That failure was actually compost. That sling business taught me how to have real conversations with customers instead of just pitching them. It showed me that my superpower wasn't in sewing or sourcing, it was in storytelling. It taught me that for me personally, I needed to build a business on an interest that was stable over time and not something that was brand new and might be a flash in the pan. And finally, it was a hard lesson in something crucial that all businesses need in order to grow. Most business advice tells you to pick a lane and stick to it. But what do you do if you're evolving? If the market is evolving? What if all this change that you're sensing isn't you losing the plot? It is actually you tuning into the signal. And this is where the story gets really interesting, because what happened next could never have been planned. Let me just say, the timing was brutal. By the time I figured out I needed to learn wholesaling, my son was walking, my interests were shifting, and the moment had passed. But I found something interesting in the wreckage. I loved the business building itself. The problem was that I just had no idea what business to build next. And we were running out of time. We were living on a single income, and my husband's job that we depended on was slated for layoffs. And this left me with this shapeless intuition that felt like both everything and nothing. And here's what everybody tells you to do when you're in that place. Pick a lane, double down, start hustling, and say no to every distraction. This is good advice if you have a solid direction and a clear sense of where you're going. Though, I'm a firm believer in the magic of distractions. I've made a whole other video on that. So there I was doing some side hustling, consulting, and ghost blogging because, I'm a storyteller. When somebody came in and asked me to do this breakfast presentation on how to write good press releases, something I happened to know quite a lot about. I didn't even know the organizer, but I said yes. That one random talk led me to my first 2 paying clients, my first online course, and my first part-time hire who actually took a pay cut and walked away from another job to work with me. Could I have engineered that, planned it, mapped out a strategy that led me to it? Absolutely not. And this is where most people get capitalism completely backwards. Capitalism is like a 500-year-old teenager. It's impatient, extractive, demands immediate results, thinks it knows everything. But nature is a 4.5 billion-year-old master builder. I know what you're thinking. That's great for nature and all, but I have a mortgage to pay. And you're right. We can't wait decades for our businesses to grow. But here's what I learned from staring off the edge of my own financial cliff. Nature doesn't just teach us to play the long game. She teaches us about coherence, integration, sufficiency. She teaches us that the best way to hit a moonshot is to work with what we already have instead of focusing on what we don't. That press release talk came from skills I already had. Those first few clients came from that audience. The business that emerged was built on credibility I had already earned. And that person I hired, she felt my utter delight in what I was doing, and she just wanted to be a part of it. I didn't have to wait years to get paid. I just had to change my lens from scarcity, which was all about where I was at and how far it was from where I wanted to be, to sufficiency, which is the distance I had already traveled and all the resources that had already gathered. And this is where most entrepreneurs get it backwards. They look at successful businesses and then try to reverse engineer the conditions that created them. It's like looking at a cornfield in Iowa and then trying to plant corn in the desert in Arizona. Instead of getting mad that you're in a desert, what if instead you started thinking about harvesting aloe from all the cacti that already grow and thrive right where you're at? And this brings me to a mind-blowing distinction that I learned from someone who spent 40 years working with both billionaires and people who had almost nothing. Lynn Twist, founder of the Soul of Money Institute, spent 40 years raising over $150 million to end world hunger. She worked with Mother Teresa, who told her something shocking. The deep poverty of the soul that afflicts the wealthy is deeper than any poverty I have seen anywhere on earth. Lynn discovered that scarcity thinking is something that afflicts both the rich and the poor. It is an unconscious belief system that has us acting in ways that are completely out of alignment with our humanity. And this is exactly what I see with entrepreneurs today. They hit their revenue goals, but somehow feel empty. They're successful, but can't shake the feeling that something's missing. No matter how much they do and how far they've come, it's never, ever enough. The difference between those who thrive and those who survive isn't how much they've got, it's their relationship with what they've got. Scarcity asks, what don't I have? What am I missing? Sufficiency asks, what do I have that's already working? What can I build from right here? When you build from sufficiency, you don't have to force patience or consistency. They come naturally. You don't have to rush when you're playing in your zone of genius. It becomes your game. What I'm discovering in my work is that when you operate this way, you create a business that's clear, calm, and compounding, even when everything around you feels chaotic. So what we talked about today is the mindset shift, the lens through which you're going to approach this new season of building. In my next video, I will walk you through the specific prompts I used to mine my own history for the building blocks that I'm using today. These 3 simple prompts will help you turn your biggest business disappointments into your most valuable assets. It's a practical framework I use with all my clients, and I will walk you through how it works with examples. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it, and drop a comment below and tell me what's resonating. I read every single comment. Remember, what looks like failure might actually be your most valuable resource. You just have to know how to look at it.